House Committee summoned Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, over the whistleblower policy. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustapha, has also been summoned by the House over the implementation and the intricacies of the policy. Their invitation to face the committee is coming on the back of an alleged loss of $2.4 billion to illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil in 2015. These funds, according to the committee's report, were recovered, but the Attorney General of the Federation did not remit the funds to the Federation account. The committee also alleged the Minister of Finance of approving payments to the whistleblower policy, to the whistleblower, I beg your pardon, outside the agreed policy benchmark. And also raised by the committee was the issue of how recovered funds were spent outside the stipulations of the Constitution. The Central Bank of Nigeria also raised an alarm about the agencies running accounts different from the Treasury single account, which has been seen to receive funds from some of these recoveries. We look at these allegations, the current Nigerian situation. Now, joining me to do justice to this is Ayodele Adio, managing editor of the Avalon Daily and publisher of the Lekki Post. A warm welcome to you, Ayodele, and thanks for joining us on PHQ.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Ayodele, could you explain the whistleblower policy of the federal government of Nigeria and what has been its impact on reducing corruption in Nigeria since it was introduced?
Well, I mean, in simple terms, the whistleblower policy was supposed to give voice to certain bureaucrats working in various federal government agencies, whether they are middle-level bureaucrats or they are low-level public servants or civil servants, to be able, to report cases of corruption, financial theft, conspiracy or irregularities within the ministries that compromise the objectives of those particular agencies of government. So the whistleblower policy was supposed to give some sort of protection to people who point out these corrupt practices that saves the government millions and millions of naira, if not billions of naira. And in exchange for their valuable information, the federal government pays out a commission to these individuals while protecting their identity. I think that the framers of this policy had envisaged that as long as there was an incentive, which was monetary incentive, to allow people to report corrupt practices within agencies of government, more people will be willing to point out people who were stealing monies within these agencies and get financially rewarded, for their honesty or patriotism, if you'd like. And that was the thinking of the people who framed this particular policy. And on the paper, it looked like a very intelligent policy. It looked like it was going to work to curb corruption. But unfortunately, it's hard to measure the impact of this particular policy, because it would seem that it really hasn't tamed a lot of corruption that is widespread in many agencies of government. It really hasn't lowered the perception of corruption across the country.
Ayodele, sorry to interrupt you, but we've seen the EFCC gleefully announce that, because of the whistleblower policy, X amount of monies were recovered or not. Is that not what's celebrated?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it that it's important to celebrate whatever monies that are being recovered, from corrupt practices, by public officials. The question is, how widespread is this impact and how significant is it, in changing the culture of corruption that has been so pervasive or has eating deep into our political system. So that's out for debate. Unfortunately, what has also even happened, is that, there's a situation where even the monies being paid out for people who are reporting these cases of corruption are either held back or delayed or overpaid, so that, these monies can be shared around other corrupt officials who make these monies to come out or be available on time. So there's a whole lot of racketeering that has also gone into this whole whistleblower policy thing.
And it
which has
works
also
against the principle of why it was created in the first place. And that brings me to my next question, Ayodele. Right now, the lawmakers in Abuja, there's a committee that has been set up to seek clarification for government officials regarding the whistleblower policy. Now, my question to you is, knowing that this administration is in its tail end and knowing how things go, you summon a senior government official, he probably wouldn't show up until after so much, and knowing that, I mean, the transition is in process and in another few weeks they will be out of government, what really can this committee achieve? What outcomes are they hoping to achieve by probing into this matter?
I mean, I hate to be very pessimistic, but I don't really see any outcome here. I mean, you've pointed a very important point. This administration is getting to the very tail end. Many of these members of this committee are not going to be returning to the National Assembly. They didn't win re-election. So you're going to be having entirely people populate these various committees that are going to be looking at these reports. So, I mean, I just think it's a lot of huffing and puffing. And it's going to lead us nowhere. And I hate to be this pessimistic because very few of the committees that are being set up by the National Assembly has had the courage to bite. It's backed a lot, but very little biting has happened from the various committees set up from the National Assembly. And the truth is they have not done their jobs. They have failed the Nigerian people to hold the executive to account and to provide the kind of oversight that nips corruption in the bud, that saves a lot of federal government revenue, and that reduces corrupt practices in these agencies of government. So they really have dropped the ball on many accounts. You saw what happened with the NDDC probe, where billions of naira could not be accounted for. And you ask the question, where's the report of that committee? Or what outcome has it led to? Absolutely nothing. So this is going to end up like another charade. A lot of huffing and puffing. Very little real work will be done to nip these corrupt practices in the bud. And it's going to be another assembly. The 10th assembly are going to be sworn in. And like I said, many of these members will not be returning. And it's unclear whether the 10th assembly would have the appetite to look into it. So it's a shame that we really have no confidence in what this particular committee is doing. And I'll be happy, very, very excited to be proven wrong.
And like you said, I mean, if there's no accountability, it gives, it makes those corrupt people, it gives them more ammunition to keep going about their corrupt practices, knowing that there will be zero consequences. Now, let's look at another matter. If this happened in other climes, heads will be rolling. And I'm talking about the alleged loss of $2.4 billion in revenue from the illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil in 2015. And a few months ago, it was, we saw pipelines that were used to steal this crude oil. There was a whole media display of the infrastructure, this sophisticated network that a whistleblower revealed. That we saw how this money was being stolen, money that could have been realized from the sale of crude oil. What is the latest on that? Have we been able to improve on our production output? And what has been the role of the investigations? Have we seen any convictions? What's the current state of things?
I mean, the answer to that is very simple. There hasn't been any reasonable convictions from that. Neither have I seen a very comprehensive and dedicated prosecution to that effect. You would imagine that, corruption at that scale, $2.4 billion, especially at a time that our country is struggling to find revenue when we're steep in debt, you would expect that some sort of a public hearing is held to ensure that that money is recovered, every penny of it, and every of those involved in the siphoning of those funds will be held accountable, and the law will take its fullest effect on them. Unfortunately, nothing is being done, at least in public eye, that we can say that there's been some sort of effort in trying to recover these looted funds or these funds that have not been accounted for. It's even more worrying, I must add, that the Minister for Petroleum is the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And you would have expected a whole lot more for a man, who was, being symbolized as the bastion of anti-corruption and one who wants to rid the petroleum sector of many of the corrupt practices. I would have expected that he would have been very hands-on this particular issue and would have set up a task team that would report directly to him and to ensure that those monies are recovered and are being used judiciously to improve the lives and livelihoods of the Nigerian people. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. It's a shame that, it's a real shame that as we speak today, there's really no headway. Nobody can tell, the progress being made in trying to recover those, looted sum. Nobody can speak categorically of where we are at this particular point in time. And the National Assembly, it's funny again that it's on the 8th day of the week that they suddenly are realizing that monies that have not been accounted for since 2015, we're still grappling with it just at the on the eve of their departure, from the National Assembly. And that's the kind of pandering, that's the kind of attitude that you have with our elected public officials. And I guess that's why we're not making as much progress as you would want in our country today. And you made the point about other climes. You would have had people who were passionate, if not fanatical, about finding where these monies have gone to and recovering those monies on behalf of the Nigerian people.
We've seen entire governments resign for less offenses in other crimes. Yes.
Exactly.
Now, looking at the whistleblowers policy holistically and looking at this recent allegations that have been made against senior government officials, including the chief law officer, the Attorney General of the Federation, receiving funds outside the country through the whistleblower policy. There's also allegations that the Minister of Finance approved payments that were not in accordance with the whistleblower policy. What impact will all this have on the effectiveness of this whistleblower policy, and how important is whistleblowing to fighting as an instrument to fight corruption?
I lost the part where you spoke about the role of the Attorney General. I think I only heard the
there were allegations that the Attorney General received funds outside the country through the whistleblower policy. So you have a situation where senior government officials are not following the whistleblower policy to the letter, and then the finance minister approving funds for the whistleblower outside the policy. So how do these things affect the effectiveness of the whistleblower policy, and how important is the whistleblower policy in fighting as a tool to fighting corruption?
I think this lack of accountability, this lack of transparency, is going to be the undoing of this country. You have public officials who believe that they are bigger than the institutions that they govern, who feel that they are unanswerable to the Nigerian people, who go about public service without accountability to the Constitution or to the people who elect them or their bosses. And that's why things like this continue to happen. Listen, it's not just about the allegations that are being raised about the office of the Attorney General not being remitting funds that have been recovered from outside the country into the Federation coffers. I'm sure you've heard many times where lawmakers have also raised their voices to say that the NNPC has failed to remit funds to the Federation account. This same accusation have been leveled against so many government agencies who it is alleged that they failed to remit monies to the Federation account. So there's a lot of impunity in our system, Gbenga, that it's head spinning. It's worrying how billions and billions of dollars can escape our system into private pockets. I can't explain it, and nobody's held to account. right? And these agencies of governments have people who preside over them, who are supposed to be stewards and who are supposed to give account of their stewardship, yet nothing happens at the end of the day. So I really do hope that we would elect a National Assembly that would have the courage to do due diligence, and hold some sort of a public probe, where the Nigerian people can see the numbers, where the Nigerian people can see the facts of the matter, can see how corrupt some of these government officials are, so that they can also put pressure on the authorities to ensure that there is prosecution of these corrupt persons who have mismanaged the resources of this country and have brought nothing but shame and disrepute to the institutions that they were supposed to govern or supposed to lead. And it's a shame. And I hope that the Attorney General is able to clarify many of these allegations, because if indeed his office is alleged to do what if its office has done what it's alleged to have done, then it will be a colossal shame, that the chief law officer of the country, the office of the chief law officer of the country, would have failed in its primary responsibility, which is to protect the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and to ensure that every actor plays by the rule. And if it had seemed to be erring, it will be a monumental shame. But really, Gbenga, all of this boils down to the fact, that you need a credible, a competent, a patriotic National Assembly who are courageous, who do their jobs, who be answerable to the Nigerian people.
So it's not just the executive. The National Assembly also needs to perform its oversight functions.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Ayodele Lawal Adio, I'm afraid we're fast run out of time. Thanks for your contribution and your insights to the program. Managing editor at the Avalon Daily and publisher of the Lekki Post. It's been a pleasure having you at Politics Headquarters. It's time for me to give you something to chew on. Stay with me. I will be right back.